Welcome to another edition of Building Code Buddy Online. Thank you for being here. I hope you all are staying safe and healthy during these trying times. The way I see it, history has shown things will get better. They have to, right? This video is an updated version of part 1 in the building permit process made simple, which is a series of videos to help people understand and navigate the building permit process. On this video, I will review a building permit application, its contents, and what it means to you if you are submitting for a building permit. If you are wondering what types of work require a building permit, don't forget to view my other video titled Types of Work Exempt from Building Permits. This will give you an idea if the work you are proposing will require a building permit. Please keep in mind that building permit applications will vary throughout building departments. However, the content shown on the building permit application we'll review are the basis for most all permit applications. Now let us get started. In general, the building permit application is a legal document that is used by cities, counties, and states to gather project specifics such as description of work, property ownership, applicant information, and contractor information, if applicable. Depending on the project you are proposing, a building permit application is sometimes required to be accompanied by other documents, such as building plans, calculations, and specifications. An example is the replacement of a water heater. Typically, such work will only require the submittal of a building permit application and maybe manufacturer specifications. However, if you were submitting for an addition to your house, then in addition to a building permit application, you may also need to submit building plans and supporting documents. On future videos, I will review submittal requirements for specific projects, so please subscribe and stay tuned. Generally, there are local and/or state laws which govern building permit applications. Here is a comparison of state law governing building permit applications to the right and a building permit application to the left. You notice the similarities? And now let us review the contents of this building permit application, starting with the permit information. A couple of these are very straightforward. The date would represent the date the building permit application was submitted, and job address is the address of where the work is proposed. However, under fire sprinklers, this is where you would indicate if there are fire sprinklers installed on your existing building. This will help determine if fire sprinklers are needed for your proposed work. If this was new construction, then the selection would be yes, since most all new structures require fire sprinklers. But check with your local fire marshal for fire sprinkler requirements. Next is valuation of construction. This is where you would indicate the value of the construction you are proposing. Please keep in mind that this is not an arbitrary number. The valuation must be the exact cost of materials and labor for the proposed work. In this exercise, we are submitting for an addition of 500 square feet to an existing single-family residence with a valuation of $100,000. Moving on to building occupancy classification, occupancy types. Building occupancy classification is basically the use of the building. The building code outlines criteria for all the possible occupancy types. There are a variety of occupancy types. For example, look around a community. How many variations of building occupancies do you see? You may see offices, you may also see schools, or you may see factories, and very common in communities, single-family residential buildings. The building codes categorize single-family residential buildings under occupancy classification of R for residential. Makes sense, doesn't it? Furthermore, single-family residential is under Group 3, as in R3 of the occupancy classifications, which is why you will see building codes make reference to R3 when referring to single-family residential buildings versus, let's say, apartment buildings, which is an entirely different occupancy group. In simple terms, the occupancy group number 3 in R3 indicates the level of risk and hazard to occupants. Example, R1, hotels, motels, you can expect to have a high number of occupants as opposed to an R3 single-family residence. Therefore, in terms of risk and hazard, R1 occupancies would have greater life safety requirements than an R3 occupancy. Now, the same applies to all other occupancy categories. To find the list of all occupancy classifications, refer to Chapter 3 of the International Building Code. The link to access the building codes is on the description box, or you may view Work Exempt from Building Permits video of this series for additional information on accessing the building codes and other helpful information. On this example, however, I will be submitting for an addition to a single-family residence. Therefore, I indicate R occupancy for residential, Group 3, R3. Moving on to construction type. Construction type is very commonly misunderstood. All buildings are classified in one of 5 construction types, which generally are based on the occupancy and the size, height of buildings. Taking into account those factors, buildings are then assigned one of the 5 construction types to determine fire resistance ratings for the construction. Theoretically, what fire resistant rating means is a duration in minutes or hours that the building construction materials or assemblies should withstand a fire exposure, thus giving the fire department time to put out the fire and allow people time to leave the building in the event of a fire. Let us briefly take a look at the 5 types of construction. Type 1 and 2 construction requires structural elements to be non-combustible. This oftentimes requires protective coatings to further delay heat penetration. Type 3 construction requires exterior structural walls of non-combustible and allows for interior walls to be as allowed by code minimums. Type 4 construction, non-combustible exterior walls and heavy timber interior walls, such as 6x6, 6x10, and so forth. And finally, there is Type 5 construction, the most combustible of them all. Such buildings designed to Type 5 standards can basically be of any materials that are allowed by code, wood or other. This is typically what single-family residential buildings are constructed to. Now that we have covered construction types, the addition to the single-family residence that we are submitting for will be constructed of standard wood stud framing, as allowed by code. Therefore, here we would indicate construction Type 5. Next, square foot of construction. This is where you would indicate the square footage of the addition we are proposing, which we will put 500 square feet for the addition. Then there is the number of buildings proposed. If we were constructing a building or buildings, then we would indicate the number of buildings. But since our submittal is for a 500 square foot addition to an existing building, we would put down 0. This completes our first block of information. The next item is a question which asks if the building permit we are submitting for is to clear a violation. We would check yes if we were submitting this permit application to legalize unpermitted work. However, since we are not submitting a permit to abate a violation, we check no. On a future video, I will go over the code enforcement process and clearing violations for unpermitted work. So click the sub button to get future notifications. Next are selections for disciplines. As you see, there are a variety of options, and basically, let's say you have a contractor applying for a storage shed with no utilities, then building would be selected. However, let's say you were installing electrical in the storage shed, then both building and electrical would be selected. Some building departments issue separate permits to the different trades. However, this also allows the building department to verify if the contractor doing the work has the appropriate license. So check with your local building department before submitting your application. Nevertheless, we are submitting for an addition, so we make this selection, which, for this example, will include all associated disciplines. And now to one of the most important part of the building permit application, the description of work. Considering the building permit, hence the description of work, is subject to public information, if the building permit is submitted and issued under a vague description of work, it can create project setbacks during the inspections, and the permitted work can come into question if the property were to sell. On a future video, I will review the Public Records Act as it relates to building permits, so stay tuned. What about you? Do you have any experiences with vague descriptions and building permits? And how has it affected you or your project? Please let us know in the comments section below. Next, you see the current property owner information. This is fairly self-explanatory. However, keep in mind that you may not be issued the building permit as an owner builder if you are an escrow or if you are the tenant. Additional documentation may be required, so contact your local building department if you are in either of the two situations. Next is the applicant's information. This is a person that is physically or digitally submitting the permit application to the building department. Let us further decipher this information. As an owner, you are typically entitled to submit and obtain the building permit and do the work on your legal property. Or you can submit and obtain the building permit and subcontract portions of the work to a licensed contractor. In this scenario, you would select this. It is very important to check with your state contractor's license agencies to inquire about owner-builder requirements, especially as it relates to hiring licensed individuals. However, if you will exclusively have a licensed contractor oversee the project, then you would make this selection. Authorized agent is required to be checked if the applicant, once again, the person submitting the application, is neither the contractor or the property owner. One example is permit runners or permit expediters, which are usually firms who are paid to submit and follow up on permit submittals. Other examples of authorized agents are relatives or employees of contractors overseeing the permit submittal. If either of these scenarios is you, then you would check this. There may be affidavits, however, required to be submitted along with a permit application if an authorized agent is submitting and picking up the permit. So check with your local jurisdiction before assigning an authorized agent. Now, regardless of whether you are a property owner, contractor, or an agent submitting the building permit application, the remainder of this would have to be properly completed. In this example, the property owner will be submitting and doing the work, so we select property owner will be completing the work. The next block is where the contractor's information would be indicated. If you will be doing the work as an owner builder, you do not need to complete this section. However, if you are the owner builder and decide along the project phase to hire a contractor or contractors to carry out portions of the work, then you would complete this information with the appropriate contractor's information. Let us take a look at what is being asked and what it means. First, there is contractor's license class or license classification. There are a variety of license classifications as you see in this video from the California State License Board. Generally, each separate trade is assigned a classification. In this example, you see a list of license classifications with a link to a brief narrative of their license scope. This agency also provides a handout describing what this license classification can and cannot legally do under the license. Typically, you can also verify contractor information, including complaint disclosure on the website. Generally, every state has a contractor regulatory agency, so be sure to visit their website for information that can help you make informative decisions prior to hiring a contractor. Licensed contractors are required to provide you with a license number, so be sure to ask for the contractor's license number, which will enable you to accurately look up their contractor information on your state's contractor agency website. Or you can use the state agency website to find a contractor's license number. Business licenses are generally required prior to conducting any business within a jurisdiction, which means prior to starting construction work. This is a process that can be done concurrently with the permit submittal, and it involves verification of state and local licensing requirements. Next, workers' compensation information. In general, workers' compensation, or workers' comp, is basically business insurance a contractor is required to have, with some exceptions, that provides benefits to employees who experience work-related injuries, amongst other liability relief to the contractor. Again, every state differs, so check with your state or local license board. Now, a licensed contractor will normally fall under one of these three selections. If the contractor you are hiring has workers' comp, this is selected. Or this is selected if the contractor certifies that they are self-insured. Or if the contractor certifies that they are exempt from workers' compensation, then this is selected. The exception typically applies to contractors who are the sole employee of the company and who have no employees, none. A worst case scenario would be if, say, the contractor certifies that they have no employees, but end up bringing in help to work on the project, and the help gets injured. Now, this scenario can put the property owner in a legal bind if the help decides to pursue damages caused at the property against the property owner as well as the contractor. I urge you to verify workers' compensation requirements with your state contractor's license board prior to hiring your contractor. The final portion of the building permit application is completed if you will have a licensed architect or engineer involved in the design of your building plans. Such individuals are regulated similarly to the licensed contractors, and correspondingly, you should verify your design professional's licensing information. This is an example of the California State Board of Professional Engineers website, and as you can see, there is a quick link to run a license check. This page contains basic information, which also includes the license check portal. Once you access the portal, you can now search your design professional's information. Licensed architects are also regulated in most all states. Here's a clip of a California state website which enables one to check architect's license to include other information of interest which should help you make your decisions before hiring a licensed architect. In most all states, there are limitations to what an unlicensed individual can design. We will cover that on a future video, or leave a comment with your experiences designing and submitting for building permits as a layperson. What are the different structures that you have designed as a layperson? Kudos to anyone tackling on the task of designing their own project. It's definitely no easy task. This completes the building permit application, but before I get to some final thoughts, I want to mention that the building permit application, when accurately and adequately completed, truly does contribute a small but significant role in helping facilitate the permit process for your project, so take the time to properly complete it. I can never emphasize enough the importance of the description of work. Be as descriptive as possible. If you have to, use a supplemental sheet, just as long as you capture a detailed project scope. A detailed project scope will help not only the agency, but most importantly you, during the permit process and beyond the final project. Contact your local building department to confirm the permit process, preferably through email. This allows you to use the email for reference if you have to. Keep in mind that the permit process can differ slightly throughout agencies. To this point, here are some things to confirm with the building department prior to submitting your building permit application. Ask, are there other documents that I need to submit along with the building permit application? If you're going to be doing the work as an owner builder, or if you're going to have an agent submit the building permit application, or if you will do the majority of the work but hire a licensed contractor for specific disciplines, what else do you need? Ask if you will need to submit building plans along with the permit application. Ask them what their submittal requirements are for your project. With technology being ubiquitous, can I submit my application and documents online? Once you are issued the building permit, be sure to keep it on site, post it preferably at all times. Also, if you are planning on changing the scope of work after the building permit is issued, be sure to inform your building department prior to deviating from the building permit scope. This will prevent delays and setback to your project if the deviations are discovered during the inspections. Lastly, and perhaps not related to the building permit application, before an agency processes your permit application, a search of your property's permit and code violation history is made. If there are any expired permits and/or open code cases against your property, it can hinder your ability to obtain a building permit. So get ahead of this by conducting your own research prior to purchasing a property through public records information. Now this concludes this video. Thank you for viewing, and I hope the information is of help to you. Your input is important, so please do not hesitate to leave questions or comments on the comment section below. My intention is to go over the entire building permit process through these videos in hopes to help you navigate the ever-evolving and what some may feel mystifying building permit process. Take care, stay healthy, and stay positive. See you next time.